Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to CVA's virtual town hall with Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson. My name is Adam Miller, Ohio Engagement Director with Concerned Veterans for America. CVA is a national organization standing for the freedom and prosperity that our veterans and their families so proudly fought and sacrificed to defend. We're actively building networks of veterans, of military families, and patriotic Americans who share our commitment to freedom. We educate this community and the general public on important public policy initiatives, and we advocate for those policies that will make our nation stronger, which will hopefully improve the well-being of our veterans, our military families, and most importantly, all Americans. We're so excited to be joined tonight by Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson from Ohio's 8th Congressional District. Congressman Davidson was born and raised in Sydney, Ohio. He enlisted in the U.S. Army after high school, and he later earned an appointment to West Point. He served in the Old Guard, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and the 101st Airborne Division. After returning to civilian life, he helped grow a family business, and he earned his MBA from Notre Dame. He's been married to his wife, Lisa, for over 25 years, and they have 2 adult children. Congressman Davidson also serves on the House Financial Services Committee, and he also serves in the House Warrior Caucus and the Army Caucus. So, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening.
Yeah, it's an honor to join you, Adam, and thanks everybody who took time tonight to tune in.
Well, Congressman, let's just jump right into it. Back in April, you spearheaded efforts to get to the bottom of a backlog in unfilled record requests for our veterans at the National Personnel Record Center. Now, we know that veterans need those records to receive VA services, and we were wondering if you could give us an update on your efforts to bring oversight to that backlog.
Yeah, so this record center is based in St. Louis. It's about a 6 million square foot warehouse, and staffed with about 700 people. And when veterans need records, that's where the request goes. So essentially, someone goes out to this, 6 million square foot warehouse. It's about 4 stories high of banker boxes, and they pull the record, and then they either fax or email it, mail it back to the veteran who requested the record. So, when COVID hit, like a lot of things, they closed down initially, but unlike a lot of places, they never really came back online. So, by the fall, they had a very large backlog. So in October, just under 200 members of Congress joined a letter to say, hey, what in the world's going on out there? And they said, well, we're staffing at 25%, just like all the other office buildings. And the reaction back then from Congress in a bipartisan way was, yeah, this isn't just a regular office building. And frankly, it's a warehouse. And kind of my reaction along the way is Amazon knows how to run warehouses. There's here near Dayton, Ohio, there's a Chewy warehouse. They ship chew toys to dogs. So you could get a chew toy for your dog, but you couldn't get your veteran record requests. So I thought that was insane. And so we put pressure on them back in October, and we thought, okay, surely this will get it solved. And they said, well, we need some money. So at the end of December, we gave them $15 million. So you think, okay, $15 million, you only got 700 employees. You ought to be able to do a lot with that. So come like February, they come up with a proposal that, well, once we get everybody back to work, we could start, catching up. And that we could clear the backlog in 18 to 24 months from whenever everybody gets back to work. You're like, what do you mean? Everybody's not back at work? You ought to be able to, you could buy hazmat suits for everybody. I mean, you could triple your staff. There's all kinds of things you could do with 15 million bucks. And they said, well, we need to digitize stuff. By all means, digitize it. That's a separate effort. But in the meantime, pull the records. So in April, as you alluded to, I went out there. And I was like, face to face needs to happen at this point. And I found in the first week of April, a veteran who had unfortunately died in January, World War II vet. The request was from January 19th for a burial request. And, the guy presumably is buried at this point. And in our own district, the 8th District of Ohio, we had veterans who were forced to be buried with no military honors because they couldn't pull the request. And in some cases, when you don't have any other way to pay for a good headstone or a burial plot, the VA has a burial benefit. So these things are going unmet because they can't pull the record request. We had a family that's just very distraught over this. And that's exactly what had happened here. January 19th is the request. The record was going to be pulled that day in April. So completely unsatisfactory. And so the idea that they can't get this done is mind blowing. So since then, what's happened? Well, we got them to get vaccines for everybody, or at least access to vaccines. And at this point, who doesn't have access to vaccines? And the Biden administration said, hey, you need to give us a plan to get back to work by January 19th, which, to their credit, they said we'll be all the way back to work on January 19th, which is ahead of the schedule. Not incredibly ambitious, but you look at what needs to happen there. Big part of it is the sort of sense of purpose and mission that came from everybody who serves on active duty, or even when you're on drill or guard and reserve, is a mission focus. We will accomplish the mission. And one of the things that I came up with during this whole process, anyone can find an excuse, and COVID gave lots of people an easy way to find excuses, but leaders find a way. And so we need leaders at that center, and we need them in a lot of agencies in our government, because similar kinds of things happen in a number of fronts, but this is really impacting our veterans. So I'm still pretty fired up about it. Sorry to go on a kind of a long rant on this first question, but it's really important, and it's just mind-blowing that this is even presented as an answer, let alone tolerated as an acceptable one by anybody.
No, and Congressman, you're absolutely right. It's such an important topic, and it is mind-blowing, but the bureaucratic red tape that some of veterans are going through to wait just on their records. We've heard stories all throughout Ohio where veterans aren't receiving services. So that care that's out of reach because they don't have those records is completely unacceptable. And we're definitely grateful for your leadership and the Ohio congressional delegation members who signed on to the letter that you spearheaded that was sent to the White House. And so it's a very important topic. We know there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and there's some progress being made now. But we just appreciate your office and you keeping tabs on that issue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Adam. But one thing to call to mind, the good news is probably about the most bipartisan topic in Congress right now is taking care of our veterans. So even when they're, obviously the place is divided on a lot of issues, but we're pretty united on making sure the government keeps its promises to our veterans. But then you check down from that, there were a lot of people willing to accept this as an excuse from the Record Center, including some Republicans, and people signed on to the letter, but the level of pressure, in the absence of more pressure, their plan A is 18 to 24 months from when they get everybody back to work. So that'll be January 19th. You can get your record request. So that means, like, if you submit one, tomorrow, 2 years from now, in the summer of 2023, you can expect your request. That is completely unacceptable. So we have to keep putting pressure on them to solve it. The other thing that really blew my mind is, in the midst of this, whether you go October, November, December, February, April, last week, is how in the world does this get no national media attention? And I think of great segments that could be done by any number of journalists nationally, whether that's Tucker Carlson or Rachel Maddow or anybody else. It's not that partisan of an issue. It's just, how in the world are we tolerating this? So I'd urge people to continue to put pressure on it. One thing for Hope, they have got their call center working the right way. And well, still plenty of room to improve, but they're staffing their call center appropriately. And then they are accepting in-person requests. So for some people, that's just not feasible. But for others, if you can get to St. Louis and you don't have time to wait, they prioritize people that show up in person. And I was at a point where, heck, we might need to organize a national rally in St. Louis to get everybody to show up all on one day, just to kind of get some press. But, in the absence of more pressure, their plan A is 18 to 24 months from January 19th. They'll clear their backlog.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, Congressman, that Concerned Veterans for America, we're going to do our part to bring more attention to this issue. Obviously, access to those records is vital to our veterans. But, the records backlog, it really was just another casualty of this pandemic. And, during the pandemic, over 20 million medical appointments were canceled, they were delayed, or they were rescheduled at the VA. And, in addition to the increasing wait times, the VA has stopped comprehensively reporting on those wait times. And we know that there is a potential of a looming wait time scandal once again, unfortunately. And we wanted to get your perspective and see, what you believe the VA should be doing to ensure that we never repeat what happened at the Phoenix VA Medical Center 7 years ago.
Yeah, so one is to get consistent reporting. And to your point, they have shifted that. The standard in the Mission Act is really clear. It goes from the time that the veteran requested an appointment. And they try to say, well, I mean, they requested an appointment for, on, January 4th or July 14th, but they didn't ask for the date until August 14th. So really, they're not delayed until August 15th. And so the reporting says, no, they asked for an appointment. They were willing to accept a month wait time, which is something. And so they shift in that way. But the September of 2020, we did get the IG, the Inspector General, to kind of review recommendations for that. And so we're really pushing for inside the VA, House Veterans Affairs Committee, to kind of get a follow-up hearing from the Inspector General to say, hey, what are the full results of that, investigation into the delays and cancellations. And, one of the things that the VA did reasonably well, but in spotty ways based on where people are, is telehealth. They're ahead of the curve in some ways on telehealth. But the last thing a lot of people want for some services is, another online meeting or a phone call or something like that. They want to be able to get it in person. And sometimes you can't do that. So that's where the community care piece came in. And we really felt like it was a big chance for the VA to do more on community care. So, we're hopeful that in a way, this pandemic will accelerate it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in 2020.
Well, Congressman, you did touch on an excellent point regarding the inconsistent guidance from the date of request to the preferred date. So we know that it's important to have that accurate data, but our organization, and I know members of Congress, we want to hear from people who are impacted. So I did want to mention that Concerned Veterans for America, we have relaunched an important effort that provides a platform for veterans to tell their story. We're going to drop this in the comments section of our Facebook Live right now, but the website that we're utilizing is www.myvastory.org. Now, this is going to be a great platform for CVA to help amplify some of these issues, and ultimately going to help us advocate for more reforms to help our veterans. So just kind of going back to the access standards, and you mentioned, community care relative really to the VA Mission Act. It did state clearly in the Mission Act that it is the date of request by the veteran to access that community care. So that is an important distinction. So I'm happy that you made that clarification. Just real quick, I did want to mention again, just thank you all for joining us, who just joined us for the virtual town hall with Congressman Warren Davidson. We've been talking about veterans healthcare. And Congressman, going back to the VA Mission Act, which you were a staunch supporter of, and it was signed into law by President Trump back in June of 2018. You had mentioned, the ultimate goal was to give our veterans more healthcare options from community providers, excuse me. And, we've heard from many veterans that they've been denied referrals to the community care program. And we wanted to ask you, how can a veteran know if they are eligible for non-VA care, and what are their options if they are not eligible, but the VA, doesn't know for sure if they are, or the VA denies them if they believe they're eligible for non-VA care? What are some of the resources that the local veterans in your district can look for?
Well, one, in the district, our office is available and people can connect to it, davidson.house.gov, similar naming protocols for people in other congressional districts around the country, around the state. Um, in Ohio, every county has a veteran service office, and those folks are anxious to help. Or you can go to the VA site, va.gov, and um, you can pull up the 6 criteria. So there are 6 criteria according to the Mission Act that you have to qualify for. And in the old school, it'd be like, well, you have to meet all 6. In the Mission Act, it's like, no, you meet any one of these, they're supposed to prioritize you for a community care option.
Yeah, and we believe that ultimately veterans, they deserve quality access to the healthcare in a timely manner. And I know that's something that you believe. And there is an excellent resource out there that highlights some of the benefits within the law and what some of us can do to make sure that the law continues to be implemented. We're going to drop that website in the comment section. Again, it's www.vamissionact.com. And it's a great resource, and it also looks at ways that we can help amplify these important topics, but also make sure that the law continues to be implemented. And as we the theme is the VA Mission Act is a major step towards greater healthcare access for our veterans. And there has been legislation that has been introduced that would give veterans more options. The Veterans True Choice Act would expand healthcare insurance options for disabled veterans and enable service-connected veterans to use TRICARE Select and TRICARE Life instead of the VA healthcare system. So, Congressman, I wanted to ask, would you be supportive of removing the current eligibility requirements for community care and giving veterans full healthcare choice?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I support, giving veterans essentially a TRICARE card that they could go to any provider they want and it'd be treated, just like our active duty folks are, for VA covered benefits. And of course, not every veteran qualifies for VA care, but for those who do, I think they ought to be able to get access at the facility of their choice. And look, the VA itself inside the VA system is phenomenal. They're the absolute best option for a lot of things. And a lot of veterans love going there because you're in a sense of community. But on the other side, look, you could end up with some pretty specialized care options. And of course, the VA wants to try to do that, but sometimes they don't do it with the same level of excellence. So, and when they can, the VA has done a good job of partnering with excellent hospitals. I know, like down in Nashville, the Vanderbilt hospitals partnered with the Nashville VA, and they have, if you're in that region, probably the absolute best heart option possible. In Ohio, we get the Cleveland Clinic and OSU. You might want to try to get to one of those facilities, even if you are in Southwest Ohio, as an example. But in Southwest Ohio, we have one of the world's absolute best burn centers. So, for, active duty and veterans who are dealing with treatment of burns or the cosmetic, surgeries that are necessary after burns, the Shriner Burn Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, one of the best in the world. So people come from all over to go there, and the VA's partnered with them. But in other parts of the country, maybe you would want to come to Ohio to go to the Shriner Burn Hospital. The VA does a reasonable job of accommodating some people, but instead of being a long negotiation and a big bureaucratic process that often takes a really long time and a lot of heartache on behalf of the veteran, and if not the veteran, himself or herself, it's the family members that do a lot of this work. Why not just make that easier with a different system? I think the Mission Act went a big step in the right direction, but I think we have a lot of options. And so one of the bills that I introduced that tries to move the ball in that direction is called the Lead by Example Act. It would require that all members of Congress, that no member of Congress shall have any other health benefit than the VA health benefit. And, some people object to that because, most members of Congress aren't veterans. But my view is if the veteran, instead of hearing these things about it, in casework or, in a meeting or a town hall or whatever, they're hearing about it, when their families calling them saying, hey, I know you're trying to get to the airport or you're trying to get to your hearing, We got an issue with our healthcare. It hits home in the household like it does for our veterans. I think you would see some remedies in a hurry, and you would increase the choice options. So that was the first bill I introduced in Congress, and it's just make members of Congress lead by example with the healthcare.
Well, Congressman, another big aspect of the VA Mission Act, it created the Air Commission, the Asset Infrastructure Review Commission, that is set to begin meeting, to discuss ways how the VA can realign and modernize its infrastructure. Unfortunately, President Biden hasn't nominated any commissioners as of yet, but wanted to get your thoughts. Like, why do you think it's necessary for the VA to modernize and realign its infrastructure to better reflect the changing veteran population?
Well, look, I mean, for-profit businesses kind of have to do that on their own. And, the VA doesn't really have to break even every year, let alone don't have to return a profit. So, without some pressure, there's not a big incentive to modernize. I think one of the big things that did help get that attention in the VA was the Mission Act, and frankly, the VA Accountability Act, which makes it easier to terminate folks who are underperforming. Thankfully, the vast majority of people that are part of the VA, they take great pride in serving and caring for our veterans. Every now and then you have an outlier. But when you look at the innovation, even people that are motivated about caring for our veterans, it's easy to get kind of complacent with the way things have always been done and not look to the cutting edge. That's one of the things I will say. I've been encouraged with the VA's efforts on telemedicine. And I will say some of that's not entirely from pure motives by some people. Some people view telemedicine as a way to stop VA choice. And I don't think you can allow technology to become the anti-VA choice effort so that you can get, prevent community care from going outside the VA system. But it is a way to modernize and get, access to people quickly. And particularly, one of the biggest stressed resources in all of American healthcare is mental health. And certainly it's hit hard in our veterans. One of the bills that we got across the finish line this year, just in the past month, was a bill that Jason Crow, another former Army Ranger from Colorado, he's a Democrat from Colorado, led the effort on, but broadly bipartisan to get more mental health resources to rural veterans. And so part of that is, increasing the access to telehealth, but then being able to escalate it and prioritize it for people to get in to facilities and then into community care where that's not available.
No, those are excellent points, Congressman. And just kind of going back to the changing veteran population, we know that it's going to decline around 40% over the next 2.5 decades. And so those are going to be some drastic changes to the VA, including how it will serve our veterans and, kind of the access that they're going to have to those facilities. And wanted to ask you real quick, would you support an audit of the VA to examine how the VA is spending its resources?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, they're supposed to be accountable for that already, but what you see in a lot of agencies, including the VA, is a very limited amount of transparency. And, one of the good efforts that, an Ohio veteran, he was the secretary, or he was our treasurer in the state of Ohio, Josh Mandel, had when he was there. He pushed the open checkbook, and then it just published the transactions online. Very easy to audit. Anybody could go in and see what's going on. And then outside groups could kind of perform their own audits. We're a long ways off from being able to pull that off, but inside Congress, you would think that, well, Congress surely gets these reports. But even when you push for the agencies, or even when the inspectors general push for analysis, they really don't get a lot of support from the accounting departments inside these bureaucracies. And, the maddening thing is, you think about it, if you had a small business or even a really big one, and you were like the CEO or you're on the board, which is kind of how I look at Congress, we're on the board. And you walk into the accounting department and they say, we can't really share that information with you. You're like, what, are you kidding me? I mean, it's just, we're on the board, give us the accounting data. And, sometimes they'll give you the superficial top level number, but they won't give you the drill down stuff. So the only thing that's really going to accomplish that is really thorough audits and accountability for failing to perform them or failing to do them just good results out of them. So they need to be, high stakes events. If we had a publicly traded company that couldn't pass an audit, they would be delisted. People would wind up going to jail, and that same sort of level of accountability needs to go towards our executive branch agencies.
Definitely. And, thank you for helping us understand a little bit of the complexities surrounding this topic. I know we can kind of get into the weeds a little bit on a little bit deeper on some of these topics, but I wanted to welcome everyone again who just joined the virtual town hall with Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio's 8th Congressional District. And just moving on to some other questions, Congressman, we've recently heard, the news all over that after nearly 20 years, the U.S. has withdrawn its last troops from Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, which ultimately served as the main hub of its operations in the country. So for years, you've pointed out that we quickly completed our mission of degrading al-Qaeda, severely punishing the Taliban who harbored them, but we are increasingly engaging in fruitless nation building efforts in the country. And I wanted to ask you, as a former Army Ranger and a longtime advocate of bringing our troops home from Afghanistan, what are some of the lessons we should learn from America's longest war?
Yeah, I mean, look, it goes back to people that read history, and you look, Sun Tzu said it well, no nation's benefited from a prolonged war. Donald Trump said it differently. Great nations don't fight endless wars. He didn't say great nations don't fight wars. So they don't fight endless wars. You go in and you win decisively. America said that was the lesson we learned after Vietnam, but Afghanistan shows we didn't retain the lessons. So that was a big thing. You remember at the time, right after 9/11, and then by 2003, Colin Powell was going in to talk to the United Nations to try to get, kind of broad support to go into Iraq, which pulled some of the focus and resources away from Afghanistan. It may be part of how, Osama bin Laden slipped through the mountains and got into Pakistan. But we've known, or believed we've known for a long time, that he was in Pakistan, and ultimately, he was killed May 2nd of 2011. So more than a decade after that, we're still in Afghanistan. So I'm, just very happy that America is leaving Afghanistan, and part of the reason is look at what happened with ISIS. And people say, yeah, look at what happened with ISIS. We should still be fighting in Iraq. No, we shouldn't. That indicates how we should have been fighting the war on terror the whole time. If you look at ISIS, there were calls from, may rest in peace, John McCain and Lindsey Graham and the Cheneys and others, John Bolton, to put like armored brigades into Syria and do regime change in Syria. Thankfully, those bad ideas were resisted, and we chose to go much more focused. We used special operations forces. We conducted targeted raids and took out people like al-Baghdadi in a raid. And then we didn't put our big ground presence where our troops could be ambushed on their daily resupply routes, on the ground. And in short order, ISIS controls no territory. And America is not occupying, Syria or, Western or Northern Iraq. So a smarter way to fight and win a war. And who knows, we may have to get engaged again against ISIS. We may have to get engaged again against al-Qaeda or any terrorist group that they would provide sanctuary to, including al-Qaeda. But that's a much smarter way to fight and win a war. And the principle of war is economy of force. And in the meantime, all the things that have gone undone with our military strength around the world, you've consumed massive amount of resources in Central Command, and that's left the rest of America's military presence weaker against bigger, more lethal foes.
Well, on a personal note, I had the honor of serving alongside some amazing warriors in Western Iraq. And, as we exit Afghanistan, the Department of Defense has said that they're going to be conducting global force posture reviews to consider, deployments elsewhere. You'd mentioned we've been in Iraq for 18 years and Afghanistan for going on 20 years, and the ISIS caliphate, it was defeated. And, now the United States is training Iraqi security forces that unfortunately have been increasingly cooperating with pro-Iranian militias which have been targeting U.S. troops. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts. Do you see any national interest for the United States staying in Iraq, especially given some of those escalation of force risks from Iran and its proxies that we've seen recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think, presence versus what presence versus anything classified. And, a lot of things in the war on terror could benefit from it. It couldn't have been us. We weren't there, right? We have a classified budget and classified operations for a reason. And I think we can be very effective and very targeted in some of our missions. But, I say that to say, look, we can't allow there to be a sanctuary for terrorists that intend to do harm to the United States of America or allies anywhere. And there is a real threat of that in Iraq. There's a real threat of that in Afghanistan, but that's not the only threat. And because of that, the United States is present all over the world. It's consuming a lot of our focus and resources to do it. So people would do well to remember that we do still face enemies. And I think that goes to the whole point. We've had a Department of Defense that's been at war heavily since 9/11, but America doesn't feel like they're at war. And that goes to the constitutional structure. The Constitution makes it so Congress declares our wars. And why? A big part of it is because, a nation needs to go to war. America needs to go to war, not just our military. And one of the things that needs to be updated is the authorization for force. People have clung to the 01 authorization and the 02 authorization because they say, well, we still have enemies. Well, yeah, the mission isn't even close to the same. I mean, the 02 AUMF was talking about taking out Saddam Hussein. That's been outdated since 04. So let's deal with what we need to deal with right now, which is the real threat is Iran and the Iranian proxies. And we don't have clear language on that. We don't have clear language. You don't have a clear mission. And that's how you wind up with it was these guys. No, it was those guys. And to highlight it, although it worked out in the long run, there was a point in time, during the transition at the end of the Obama administration, when you had the CIA funding one group of moderate Muslim rebels and the Department of Defense funding another. And they were basically blowing up the war, escalating a war. That is counterproductive. You need a clear mission statement. Congress, to represent the whole of the people, needs to authorize it, and then DoD needs to be held accountable for achieving it decisively, so that we don't wind up in more endless wars.
Yeah, no, Congressman, those are all excellent points. And, unfortunately, for many years, the American people's voice on matters of war and peace, deciding when and why to send our troops into harm's way, it's been pretty absent. So it's obvious that we need to truly re-examine our military involvement in wars not connected to our national interest. And I know, we just want to thank you for recently voting to repeal the 2002 authorization for use of military force, which was the authority for the Iraq War that you voted on recently. And, we view this as a constitutional, a fiscal, and probably most importantly, a moral issue, especially when we're talking about engaging in conflicts that are not critical to the security of our nation. So we definitely appreciate your perspective on that. And just real quick, I wanted to mention that, End Endless Wars is a top priority for Concerned Veterans for America. And we have an initiative right now where you can text from your mobile phone. EEW stands for End Endless Wars to 46262. And we're going to throw that in the comments section of this Facebook Live as well. But Congressman, just again, we thank you so much for your vote, the recent vote on the 2002 AUMF. And just real quick, again, we wanted to give you a chance to mention, if veterans have any questions about accessing healthcare or any of these issues or benefits, what are some of the resources that your office can provide them? Again, just want to make sure we get that on the record.
Yeah, I mean, direct with our office, the website's davidson.house.gov. That'll connect you to, all of our social media accounts, our email accounts, our physical addresses, and, just a number that you can call and connect with our caseworkers. So casework's a big part of it. So when a veteran's not getting results from the government at the level pace that they should be getting, people create cases. And that's true in all congressional districts. And we like to really take a lot of pride in doing that. And I will say that, as I've said on this call and others, is, probably the most bipartisan issue in Congress right now is making sure the country keeps its promises to our veterans. So a big part of that is our casework. And I think the other thing is just taking time to meet. So just being invited to things like this or things in the community, wind up on the schedule. And if you get onto a member of Congress's schedule or even one of our staff members, people prepare for it. You get notes, they come in, and then you get, someone's attention and they listen to what your issues are. So I think take the time to reach out and get on your member of Congress's schedule. And if, normally part of that is getting on someone on the staff's schedule. So that really highlights the concerns. People stay up to date with it. And one of the things that dropped off over time was, to your point, is anybody paying attention? Because I think the country was ready to move on from Iraq and Afghanistan for a long time. And broadly they did, but we kept deploying our countrymen over to, as the saying goes, do things sacred and profane on behalf of our country. And that's why I just think look, we're asking incredible things of our young men and women, and the least that Congress could do is vote on it. So I'm thankful that they finally did. I remember all the efforts, frankly, when Republicans had the majority in the House and Senate that were underway, that ultimately they avoided voting on it. And because of that, a guy named Rodney Frelinghuysen, he's no longer in Congress. He's a Republican from New Jersey. He was the chairman of appropriations from 2017 to 2019. And he defunded, Afghanistan. And I just remember at the time, I literally gave him a hug on the floor. I was so happy that he finally did something. And people said, well, that's not really the right way to go about it. Well, the right way to go about it in the Foreign Affairs Committee or Armed Services, nobody's getting it done, because the same people that support the endless wars are the people that are on those committees. So they're not doing it. And so I was glad we finally broke through. And part of the key to getting those breakthroughs is people that are taking time on calls like this tonight to get on somebody's calendar and meet with them and make sure they know how important it is to you and your family and those you serve with, that they take whatever action is you're passionate about. It makes a difference.
Yeah, and I can say, a lot of these issues, topics that we discussed tonight are very personal to a lot of us at Concerned Veterans for America. But I did want to give you the floor to make any closing remarks. I know we talked a lot about a lot of issues, but if there's anything you wanted to add on any of the topics, feel free to take the floor.
I just want to thank you. I mean, because, Adam, you've been in front of me and, frankly, some of your predecessors there. It's hard to believe I've been in Congress for 5 years now. It's flown. But, you hear from groups all over the spectrum on all kinds of issues. But I got to say, consistently, one of the most effective groups I've interacted with is Concerned Veterans for America. So thanks for the work you do to make veteran voices heard, that you put before not just me, but all of my colleagues, issues where they can tangibly make a difference on things like the VA Mission Act and the VA Accountability Act. I mean, there were a lot of people working on that, but I know your organization was a big part of getting that across the finish line. So thank you. Thank those that are part of the organization, and from the grassroots to the people that help put it together, because it really does make a difference. So, and thanks for having me and paying attention to the issues.
Well, Congressman, we want to thank you again for your continued service to our country. And I do want to thank everyone that was watching, tuning in on Facebook Live this evening. To stay connected with Concerned Veterans for America, go to our website, www.cv4a.org. And I would also encourage everyone watching to connect with us on our social media sites. And we can get involved, get active, and really make a difference in veterans' lives. So thank you again, Congressman. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great night.